watching Saturday Night Live when we talk about that forecast.
Yeah, we've been all clear here this morning, but you are watching a little system that could hit Saturday night.
Yeah, we're going to have some rain mixing with some snow Saturday night into Sunday morning. So good weekend.
All right, stay weather aware. Thanks for being with us here today and all week. The Today Show starts now.
Good Friday morning, we are following a developing story overnight.
An unprecedented and controversial execution here in the U.S. It's January 26th. This is today. Breaking news, an Alabama inmate becomes the first person in U.S. history to be executed by nitrogen gas just 1 year after he survived a failed lethal injection. The state calling it humane and effective. Critics say it's torture, and the victim's family speaking out.
We're glad this day is over.
The latest and what it could mean for other death row cases across the country. Wild weather. New flood watches issued for the already soaked South. Even more rain on the way for that region today and up and down the East Coast this weekend. Al is tracking the storms. Closing arguments. Donald Trump's defamation trial nearing an end after the former president took the stand for just 3 minutes, while the judge told jurors to ignore much of what he had to say. Key hearing. The suspect in the Idaho College murders back in court today. The family's desperate for a trial date to finally be set.
If they don't push for this summer, we're looking at over a year. And that's mind-boggling. It's sickening.
Their emotional new plea straight ahead. All of that plus 6 months to go. A new milestone in the countdown to the Paris Olympics this morning. Just ahead, our firsthand look at how the city and Team USA are preparing.
I'm like, wait, I'm going. This is happening.
We'll take you live to Paris. And football fever. Fans gearing up for 2 huge games this weekend with trips to the Super Bowl on the line.
Restore the roar. Go Lions.
We're getting you ready with super fans of the Lions, Ravens, Chiefs, and 49ers. And a playoff pep rally live from coast to coast today, Friday, January 26th, 2024.
From NBC News, this is Today with Savannah Guthrie and Hoda Kotb, live from Studio 1A in Rockefeller Plaza.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to Today. Nice to have you along with us on a Friday morning, and I am fired up about a football weekend.
There are 4 big cities having big parties for the next couple of days, and we're going to be at all of them. That's going to be a fun pep rally. I like that we're doing that on a Friday.
Oh, yeah. The
games.
fans are fired up, and we're going to have fun in just a bit. We'll get you ready for the games. We're also keeping an eye on the wet weather, which will affect millions.
Here's a live look at Boston. The storm, it's pummeled the South now on its way up north. So what is that going to mean for your morning commute and your weekend? Al, of course, will have all the answers.
All right, we're going to begin this morning, though, with breaking news out of Alabama overnight. For the first time, an inmate has been executed in this country using nitrogen gas. Kenneth Smith was convicted in the 1988 murder of a pastor's wife. He was pronounced dead at 8:25 p.m. local time.
This was actually the state's second attempt to execute Smith after a failed lethal injection. And it took place after the U.S. Supreme Court rejected a last-minute appeal from Smith's lawyers, who raised concerns about this untested method of execution. NBC's Emily Aketa has this story. Hey, Emily, good morning.
Guys, good morning. This controversial and untested method was used in place of lethal injection. Smith's legal team argued it may lead to pain and suffering in those last-minute legal battles, but the state says the execution proceeded as planned. Overnight, an unprecedented execution going forward in Alabama. The state performing the country's first ever nitrogen gas execution on convicted killer Kenneth Smith. Officials saying the execution began at 7:53 p.m. local time, and Smith was pronounced dead at 8:25. They added the nitrogen flowed for about 15 minutes and that Smith had labored breathing.
He struggled against his restraints a little bit, but there's some involuntary movement and some agonal breathing, so that was all expected.
The corrections commissioner saying he appeared to be holding his breath as long as he could. The 58-year-old was convicted for the 1988 murder-for-hire killing of Elizabeth Sennett. He had been in prison for 35 years. Smith was scheduled to die in November 2022, but the attempt at lethal injection didn't work. Before the execution, the Supreme Court rejected another last-ditch effort from Smith's legal team to stop it, arguing it could lead to prolonged pain and suffering. Though state officials have testified in court that nitrogen gas is painless and humane. According to media witnesses inside the chamber, Smith, quote, shook and writhed for about 2 minutes on a gurney, followed by several minutes of deep breaths. Smith's spiritual advisor, Reverend Jeff Hood, witnessed the execution.
And we also saw correction officials in the room who were visibly surprised at how bad this thing went.
Victim Elizabeth Sennett's family reflecting on the impact of Smith's crime as they look towards closure after years of loss.
Kenneth Smith made some bad decisions 35 years ago, and his debt was paid tonight.
And NBC News has reached out to the Alabama Department of Corrections for more information on the reaction from witnesses, but we have not heard back. State officials have said Smith's response to the gas was part of the known side effects and what they were expecting.
All right, Emily, on that breaking news, thank you very much.
Meantime, wet weather remains a big story across a lot of the country. Millions of people under new flood alerts this morning after days of heavy rains in the south. In a moment, we're going to get to Al's forecast. But first, NBC's Aaron McLaughlin joins us now from Boston. Aaron, we know it's been bad in the south, and now it's headed that way. What are you expecting there?
Hey, Hoda, good morning. As you can see, it's pretty wet here in Boston. But let's first talk about what's happening down south, which is very much in cleanup mode this morning after getting absolutely pummeled with rain yesterday, with rainfall rates in some places as high as 1 inch an hour, creating dangerous flooding conditions, submerging homes and cars. We saw really harrowing evacuation efforts and rescue operations. That storm system now making its way up the coastline to where I am now, with tens of millions of Americans waking up this morning on flood watch and facing a very messy and potentially soggy morning commute here in Boston. To put all of this wet weather in perspective, this city has seen nearly double the historical average rainfall for the month of January. But there is some good news ahead. This is expected to dry out later today and into tomorrow with higher than average temperatures. So some hope for folks on the horizon. Hoda.
Oh, we like how that sounds. All right, let's confirm all of this with Mr. Roker, who's at the map. Hey, Al.
Hey, guys, good morning, and good morning to you. We've got a weekend 1-2 punch. Okay, so here's storm number 1. That's going to affect the Northeast today. Storm number 2 going to be making its way across country and causing some big problems. So we start off with today. Lingering rain, Midwest to the Northeast, an icy mix to the north, and ice and snow for parts of northern New England. Now, today, we get this new surge of rain developing. 2 systems now starting to push their way, possible flooding again down through the Gulf. This system tomorrow pushes up into the mid-Atlantic with heavy rain and wind. There's a severe weather threat across Alabama and Georgia, so we're going to be watching that for tomorrow. And then as we move on into Sunday, heavy rain and winds near the coast, and on the backside of this, looking for snow to develop from the Appalachians to New England. So heavy rain, 1 to 3 inches, could be upwards of 4 down through the southern Gulf around New Orleans and Louisiana, Alabama coastline. And through Sunday, anywhere from 1 to 3, maybe some isolated 4-inch amounts from upstate New York, interior Pennsylvania, on into New England, guys.
All right, Al, thank you. We'll check back. Closing arguments are being held today in the defamation case brought against Donald Trump by the writer E. Jean Carroll, the former president briefly testifying in his own defense yesterday. And away from the courthouse on the trail, he's ramping up his attacks on Nikki Haley, his lone remaining rival in the 2024 race. NBC's Peter Alexander keeping an eye on all of it. Peter, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning to you. Mr. Trump is expected to be there for those closing arguments today, again campaigning from the courtroom. This time as he waits to learn how much he owes writer E. Jean Carroll for branding her a liar. Meanwhile, his threats to ban anyone who donates to his Republican rival Nikki Haley appear to be backfiring, with a Haley campaign overnight saying Trump's scheme blew up in his face. For former President Trump on tap today, closing arguments and possibly a verdict as a jury weighs how much money and damages he must pay writer E. Jean Carroll for defaming her. Mr. Trump speaking out in a video posted overnight.
I don't even know who this woman is. This is another scam.
Mr. Trump, who last May was found liable for sexually abusing Carroll, stood by his denial of that accusation in the courtroom on Thursday, saying he, quote, wanted to defend myself, my family, and frankly, the presidency. The judge quickly striking that statement. As he tries to nail down his party's nomination, Mr. Trump is raging about Nikki Haley's refusal to exit the race and has been lobbing personal attacks at Haley.
Wow, what a great victory. But then somebody ran up to the stage all dressed up nicely.
The former president is threatening to blacklist Haley donors, warning they, quote, will be permanently barred from the MAGA camp. An attack Haley appeared to welcome. Her campaign now selling T-shirts that read "barred permanently," and quickly raising more than $1 million in less than 24 hours. Still, Mr. Trump is not alone in the pressure campaign to force Haley out. The Republican National Committee was eyeing a move to declare the former president the party's presumptive 2024 nominee as early as next week, according to a draft resolution obtained by NBC News. But after Mr. Trump rejected the idea, the RNC backed off, according to a source familiar with the resolution.
It's a great day in South Carolina.
Despite a double-digit deficit in her home state, according to polls, Haley will hold back-to-back rallies there this weekend, not backing down, but ramping up jabs at her former boss.
He didn't talk about the American people once. He talked about revenge.
And Peter, another note there in Washington, Trump obviously not the official nominee yet, but he's already impacting what's happening in Congress. There's a bipartisan border deal on the table. Trump doesn't like it. What's the dynamic at play here?
Yeah, Savannah, you're exactly right. So in simple terms, this is another clear display of Mr. Trump's real influence over the GOP, specifically in Congress. The Senate, as you know, has been working for months on a border security deal, getting closer to finalizing what some Republicans have even said is the best opportunity in decades to get it done. But Mr. Trump's public push to try to kill that deal is now really severely complicating things. The top Republican, Mitch McConnell, behind closed doors just this week, telling his colleagues they may not want to undermine Donald Trump on the issue since he wants to run on it. Now, Democrats and Republicans, including Trump allies, are blasting the former president's opposition to any deal. One Republican, Savannah, slamming it as, quote, immoral to do nothing because you think it could help Mr. Trump win. Savannah?
And a lot of Republicans think it won't get any better even if he does win the White House, so it's very controversial. Peter, thank you very much.
Meantime, that unprecedented trial of the Michigan mother of a convicted school shooter will continue today. The closely watched case testing the limits of who is responsible for a mass shooting. NBC's Jesse Kirsch at the courthouse for us. Hey, Jesse, good morning.
Hoda, good morning. Witnesses are expected back on the stand behind me here today after an emotional first day of testimony. Survivors describing the massacre. The defendant, Jennifer Crumbley, at times sobbing, and her attorney arguing the shooter's father bared more responsibility when it came to gun safety at home. Sharing shooting range videos, messages, and photos in court Thursday, Michigan prosecutors showing evidence suggesting that Ethan Crumbley's parents, James and Jennifer, were well aware of his interest in guns before he carried out a massacre at Oxford High School.
Jennifer Crumbley didn't pull the trigger that day, but she is responsible for those deaths.
Facing trial this week ahead of her husband, Jennifer Crumbley is accused of involuntary manslaughter, one count for each schoolmate her son killed. Both parents have pled not guilty. Jennifer Crumbley and her husband are accused of failing to act even hours before their son's attack when a school official showed them his handwritten note saying, "Help me," with a drawing of a gun.
They didn't do any number of tragically small and easy things that would have prevented all of this from happening.
Prosecutors showing an Instagram story from Jennifer of Ethan and his father at a shooting range. And this video of Jennifer firing a weapon with her son just days before he killed 4 schoolmates. The defense team says Jennifer Crumbley was a caring mother, pointing the finger at Ethan Crumbley's father when it came to gun safety.
She did not have it on her radar in any way that there was any mental disturbance, that her son would ever take a gun into a school, that her son would ever shoot people.
Ben Johnson represents multiple victims' families.
You don't see any difference between either parent's responsibility, regardless of who was more interested in guns.
No, adults are adults.
both have a responsibility to make sure it is locked and secured.
On the first day of testimony, jurors also hearing from school employee Molly Darnell, emotional and describing the moment she was shot.
I locked eyes. And then instantly I see some movement. And so I look down and I realize he's raising a gun to me.
And we could soon see Jennifer Crumbley on the stand herself. Her attorney says she will testify in her own defense in this unprecedented trial. Hoda?
All right, Jesse Kirsch for us there in Michigan. Jesse, thank you.
Much more to get to this morning, including the huge weekend ahead in the NFL playoffs. The 4 remaining teams are going to take the field on Sunday. A trip to Las Vegas and Super Bowl 58 on the line. NBC's Kaylee Hartung joins us with everything we need to know ahead of these big matchups. Hi, Kaylee.
Hey, good morning, guys. Win or go home stakes are never as high as Conference Championship weekend. The 2 number 1 seeds, that's Baltimore and San Francisco, are hosting and favored, but the underdogs, if you can even call them that, cannot be counted out. The defending Super Bowl champs and the team that has seemingly emerged as America's favorite, Detroit. History could be made as we watch the game's biggest stars battle it out.
The drama-packed postseason is coming to a head as 4 teams fight for the right to play in Super Bowl 58.